Hey guys, welcome back to the Criterion Collection review series, where we're going through my personal Criterion collection as I rewatch, and for some of them watch for the first time, a lot of movies released by Criterion and give my thoughts and opinions on them. And today we're going to be talking about a movie that is one of my favorite discoveries from here. It was a film that I'd known about and had seen references to, but it wasn't until I had the Criterion release that I was able to see how incredible of a movie it is and how important it is. And that would be 1955's The Night of the Hunter, which is number 541 in the collection. The plot of the film follows two children, John and Pearl, whose father is being sent to prison for stealing money during the Depression era in West Virginia, I want to say. And while in prison, he meets a man who's most well known as the Preacher, played by Robert Mitchum, who is this serial killer that believes that God is speaking to him and is telling him to punish people, I guess, or punish sinners by seducing and marrying widows, killing them, and then stealing their money. So when he hears that John's father has some money, he decides to go to this man's family after he's been executed and try to seduce the widow and find where the money is. But John is very much suspicious of the Preacher and is trying his best to keep the family together while avoiding the advances of the Preacher and trying to figure out where the money is buried. So right off the bat, what is so important and striking about The Night of the Hunter is the cinematography. The film, I always compare it to like a Universal monster movie or a German expressionist film, and mainly due to the lighting and the shadows in the film, which are very striking, very exaggerated. There's a lot of silhouettes, there's a lot of like underlighting, there's a lot of, I guess, dark or blank space. That helps to sort of reinforce this idea that the film is from a child's perspective, giving it a almost fable, fairy tale type of vibe that helps to make it more intense and scary. A lot of the lighting in the film is so striking. There's a lot of silhouettes. There's one of the scenes that always sticks out to me is one in which the children are trying to escape from the basement as Robert Mitchum is chasing after them. And I'm going to try to frame this correctly. He chases them up the stairs kind of like this, like with his arms out, his hands are like this. It reminds me of like a zombie from the Thriller music video, or like the Frankenstein monster, which is just, it's very exaggerated, it's very heightened, but it's showing the monstrous evil beneath the surface. That is the Preacher character, who normally is very charismatic, who you can clearly tell why people are drawn to him and take a liking to him. And of course, this character is most well known for having the words love and hate tattooed on his knuckles, and he has this whole story about the conflict between love and hate, where, love and hate are constantly fighting, and it seems like hate's gonna win, but love wins out ultimately, even though he is definitely more on the hate side and is sort of fueling that fire and that fight rather than love. One thing to mention is, or to build off of that, is how great the performances are in this film. Robert Mitchum as the Preacher, as I just said, is so charismatic, he's so good, but he can easily be menacing as well and be very intimidating. But then at the same time, he can be so exaggerated and beastly and monstrous, where he has a lot of like screams and yelps and these roars that they are at once intimidating and scary, but also kind of comedic in how exaggerated they are and how different they feel from the rest of the movie. That helps to sort of, again, talk down or show this evil side of this character. It's simply amazing. But then the other actors in the film are also great. Shelley Winters, I think, is one of the more underrated performances in the film, where she's able to play this very reserved, naive, almost widow who is easily seduced and ultimately tortured mentally and physically by the Preacher, who is sort of led to believe she will live a certain life and then forced into another thanks to the preacher's own inability to hide his desires and his sins, and rather taking it out on other people, specifically women. And the children are also really, really great. And it, if the children weren't as good as they are, especially with how much the film is focused on them and their perspective and their experience, it really would hurt the film. And so it's a good thing they found those actors that they did to really sell it. And one of the other great performances that I don't want to get into too much because it kind of spoils the last half of the film, it would be the performance of is the actress Lillian Gish, who sort of plays this matriarch who I always see as like one side of the same coin that the preacher is on, where both have a duty they feel to preach the word, to talk about God and the Bible and the stories, but while one, Robert Mitchum's preacher, is destined or feels he needs to punish and he needs to do the Lord's work and sort of be a vessel, to punish sin however he sees fit. Lillian Gish's character is more focused on helping and support, and while there is some tough love there, she ultimately is forgiving and is sympathetic and empathetic towards these children and what they're going through. Sort of taking care of abandoned children in the Depression era. One of the scenes or lines that really inhabits this idea of this, this love and hate, right? These two different ways of teaching and helping people, is when sort of one of the older girls that lives with them, that lives with Lillian Gish's character, tries to go out and meet some boys, and she meets Robert Mitchum's preacher, who is very antagonistic towards her and who really goes off on her for trying to, make a move on him, essentially. When she returns to Lillian Gish and sort of has an emotional moment with her, rather than scolding her, rather than, punishing her, she just takes her in her arms and says, essentially she says, you were trying to find love in the only way you knew how, in your young, naive way that you had seen other people do, and it's not, it's not this character saying she's bad for wanting that. It's more just an indictment of this society and maybe even of herself for not being able to properly teach the safe way of expressing these desires and wanting to feel special and feel loved. And I think overall The Night of the Hunter is just a really effective fable. A really effective film that puts you in the perspective of these children and of what they're going through. That mixes it with a lot of beautiful yet exaggerated cinematography and sequences that perfectly mesh into this film, dealing with the war, the fight between love and hate, and how effective love is, even tough love is, at defeating hate and evil in all of its forms. It's a film that can be scary, that can be intimidating through its imagery, through its performances, but there is still this reassurance, this hope at the end of it. And I think it is just a beautifully well-made film, one that I have seen so many times now. I think this might be my third or fourth time, and every time it blows me away, just absolutely. I love this movie so much. And thankfully, Criterion knows there are a lot of people that love this movie and seem to understand its importance, because this release from them is simply fantastic. So to give a little bit of context on why this release is important, the film was directed by Charles Laughton, who at the time was a well-known and famous character actor. And he decided to direct this film after directing some Broadway plays. And the film was not successful upon release. Critics didn't really take to it, audiences didn't see it, and it was just kind of forgotten about. It wasn't seen as anything special. No one really gave it a chance, I guess. And so Charles Laughton was so distraught by this that he never made a film again, unfortunately, and died a few years later. But then throughout the 80s and 90s, the film has been sort of rediscovered, and people have found it and given it life and importance. And what is so great about this film, or this release from Criterion, is that on the first disc you get a lot of special features talking with the cast members, the cinematographer, the writers, all these different people discussing the film and what was so great about it and what made it so special and important at the time. We also get a second disc with the film that includes a 2.5-hour collection of archival footage from the making of the film, outtakes and bloopers, and just general, the spare reels of the film that weren't used in the final product. And they were all compiled together by a team of film archivists in the 90s and 2000s and made into this documentary of sorts that goes through the film chronologically and shows all of the different scenes and takes and performances of the film that gives us an insight not only into how the film was created, but how Charles Laughton worked as a director and his perfectionism and his ability to speak to actors and work with them. And as a fan of the film, it is absolutely fascinating. It's insane to me that there exists, this entire feature-length film that is just archival footage that is absolutely fascinating, of just seeing every single take, of seeing how the film was constructed and put together, the different angles and ideas they had on set that they then brought together to construct into the final film. It's simply fascinating, and the person that helped, the main force that helped to make the film, he actually has he gives narration throughout the film about the history of certain actors, of the director, of scenes, giving you an explanation of what's going on and why it's important or interesting. And I think, this kind of lines up with almost like the Brazil Blu-ray or the Battle of Algiers, where you have your one disc that is specifically about the movie and about the context and talking with the actors and performers and whatever else you want to say. But then you have the second disc that is all just contextual, right? That's all just, hey, if you want a deep dive into this movie and what makes it special and important, like if you love this movie and you just want to know more about it, here you are. Here is your release. Here is this special edition you've been searching for. And it's just absolutely fascinating, and it's just so well made and constructed and took years and years of work that I'm glad we can have of easily available, or fairly easily available. And then last but not least, of course, the booklet, where you have a great opening essay written by Terrence Rafferty, just talking about the general themes of the film and the way it is like a Southern Gothic film and the way it sort of plays with those religious themes and things like that. But then we also get an essay written by Michael Srago, I hope I said his name correctly, who writes about James Agee, the writer, and sort of conveying how important his script and his writing is to the film, and sort of works and marries with the cinematography and the visuals in order to tell this story and make it more fully rounded. But yes, The Night of the Hunter, one of the greatest horror films ever made and one of the best Criterion releases they've ever had. So clearly I really, really recommend this movie. Even if you don't want the Criterion release, I'm pretty sure it's on the Criterion channel. I believe it's a must-see and an essential film, especially for people into more expressionistic lighting and filmmaking, things that are more exaggerated, more emotional rather than, I don't know how else you would phrase it, but just a truly spectacular film that I will probably watch many more times throughout my life. Well, either way, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want more people to watch this, please share it around wherever you can. Also, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Night of the Hunter and Robert Mitchum and Charles Laughton's direction and about this release in general. And if you want to watch more videos like this, please consider subscribing. Where next time we're going to be looking at one of Guillermo del Toro's first films, Cronos, which I'm very excited to talk about. But thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.